Okay? And they weren't out in your communities, and they weren't, and there still was that headset of parents who had kids with diagnoses that you didn't tell people. Where today, you have to tell people, you have to advocate. So a lot of things came together to explain why we do see this sort of increase today. Very quickly, I just want to talk about theories on etiology. The number one accepted cause for an autism spectrum disorder label is genetics. Okay? But please understand, genetics is incredibly complex. Far more complex than I can really understand when I go to people who talk about this. I think the best example I could give is that there's 17 indicators now, genetic indicators that may be associated with autism, but some of those don't cause autism. They may actually be starter genes that turn on other genes or turn off other genes depending on other genes that are in the mix, which may help explain why we see some of this spectrum stuff. But in simpler terms, it's like the breast cancer gene. Now, we know there's a breast cancer gene, but having the breast cancer gene doesn't mean you're going to get breast cancer. There are other factors. So it's a very complex genetic picture. There's a lot of research going on in neurochemical and neurobiological disturbances, looking at the actual brain itself. And are there issues related to neurotransmitters or something called cell death? There's a lot of research looking at something called mirror neurons, which are these neurons that basically allow you to imitate. They give you the ability to imitate. And if you can't imitate, it's very hard to learn. Okay? So there's some really interesting there. There is actually research going on in environmental toxins, heavy metals, vaccines. That research does still continue. But there's also a lot of interesting, if completely useless theories. I've gotten people emailing me telling me that they thought it was, if you could correlate the rise in autism diagnoses with the advent of disposable diapers. So putting kids in disposable diapers was the cause of autism spectrum disorder. I think we can rule that one out. Okay, but you can come up with as many theories as you want. And of course, there are the historical and current discredited theories. I'm sure many of you here, if you don't remember, know of the days when we blamed it on mom. Okay, refrigerator mother, Brutal Bettelheim, said that this mother is so bad, so cold, so uncaring, so unloving, that her son chose to be like this. He actively pursued a life inside himself to get away. Okay? The clinical term for him was nuts. Okay? There is absolutely no evidence. There is no proof to support his point of view. Okay? It just wasn't, it doesn't exist. You know, today we have other fad etiologies, oxygen deprivation, autism as a movement disorder. Okay? And I'm not knocking these, but what I am pointing out is that these are, the need is so great that information is pressing, and sometimes we get the wrong information out there. Okay? Let me talk about some of the facts and fictions here. First fiction, autism is an emotional or psychological disorder. Okay, that if we did counseling, if we did supportive intervention, you know, we could actually help these kids to get better. Well, it's a neurological disorder with its basis in genetics. And I said, bad parenting does not cause autism. One of my friends with autism, Asperger's syndrome actually, very capable woman. She's a mother. She's a blast. I was working with her one time and doing some role play after she had had a very bad social situation with somebody else about how she could do it better. And at one point she turned to me and she said, do you realize that I have a neurological disorder that makes it hard for me to understand social skills? And you think that you're going to fix me in an hour every other week? Do you realize people have been trying to do that for the past 35 years? You know? And I had to say, good point. So where do we go from here? How do we now address this in a way that really works for people? When we talk about etiologies, a big fiction is that autism will end up with a single etiology, that we will find a cure. We won't find a cure. Okay? There are going to be multiple etiologies, multiple genetic components, multiple issues that result in this diagnostic configuration that we call autism. Okay? We have known the genetic underpinning for Down syndrome for more than half a century. What's helped? Good intervention. We've known the genetic cause for cystic fibrosis for 27 years now. What's helped? Good intervention. Okay? So while we continue to look for the multiple etiologies, we do have to look at how do we make people's lives better. If enough people say something works for individuals with autism, then it must work. Fact, anecdotes, no matter how many there are, do not constitute data. I'm sure you all saw or heard Jenny McCarthy on television talking about how she cured her son with vitamins and minerals and Cocoa Puffs and, not Cocoa Puffs, but, well, she also had really, really good early intervention. She had the best early intervention you can get in this country. But she doesn't talk about that. All people hear is if I do vitamins, if I do this, if I do that, I will cure my son or daughter, okay? But there's no data to support that. And no matter how many anecdotes you hear, when I was a kid, I was watching with my family, You Bet Your Life, not You Bet Your Life, What's My Line? And this guy who signed in cured his asthma by smoking cigars. Even I knew he was an idiot. So we have to be very cautious in how we approach this stuff, okay? And you know what? We may find out 20 years from now with the research that some of what Jenny McCarthy was saying was right. I don't know. That's the beauty of research, is that it's an open question until it's solved, but we need to look, all right? I already talked about the fact, autism is a big fiction. Autism is untreatable. You know what? Autism is very treatable. And we know that with early intervention, some kids go on to lose their diagnosis, but you know what? Even without that, kids continue to learn and grow and participate and have lives. Okay, there is no point in anybody's life where they max out. None of your lives, and none of the lives of people with autism spectrum disorders. We have tremendous success actually getting kids to learn how to live life in the community by doing something called having them live in the community. Okay, so it's continually treatable across the lifespan. And individuals, the fiction as well, they can't learn really complex skills. We have guys riding buses. We have guys who can take planes by themselves now. They can't fly the plane, but they take the plane. Okay, any skill you think you can teach, you probably can teach. You just have to know how to do it. Okay. There's this myth that people with autism can't be good friends, can't be part of your life because they're asocial, because they don't communicate, because they don't. You know what? In most of your friendship relationships in your life, it hovers around a 50-50 balance of sharing. You put in 50%, they put in 50%, and that makes that 100% whole. Okay, sometimes it's 60-40, sometimes, it goes back and forth. But with people with autism, for those of us here in the room, but not on the spectrum, we have to make the effort. We're the ones who have to sort of go out there. So it's going to be like a 70-30 investment on our time. But if you do it, I guarantee you it's going to be worth it. If somebody on the spectrum likes you, guess what? They really just like you. They don't like you because you got a hot sister, They like you, because you took time to understand who they are, to get into their lives and their understanding. Okay, they're funny. They have a sense of humor. It really is, if you spend the time, it is well worth it. One of the big fictions about adults, employing adults with autism is charity and not good business sense. Okay, if there are any employers here, and I encourage any employers here to consider hiring people with autism, but if you think it's charity, don't do it. Okay, I don't want your charity. My guys don't want your charity, but they want your business. Okay, they want to be treated as competent adults, and they need your feedback, and they need you to tell them what you expect. And with that, we need the business people around to work with schools and tell the schools, listen, you're not preparing kids to work for me. These are the skills that kids need if they're going to work for me. So let's start looking at that, and let's sort of pair up to everybody's benefit. Because you know what? If we educators can teach the right skills for you employers, once we get out of this economic crisis, you're going to have a great pool of resources that you can depend on. And you know what? And I mean this with all due respect to my friends with autism, they're not going to be late. They're going to be really on time. They're not going to call in sick on Friday night on Fridays because they went out partying Thursday night. Okay? They're not going to hang at the water cooler. They're going to do your job. They're going to be part of the social fabric of your work. But you're going to find some really good workers who are really great people.